They say you can feel it when your life is about to crack wide open. That night, I felt it in my bones. The condo was dead quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your ears. Washington, D.C. slept outside our windows, city lights glowing soft and distant, like none of it cared that my marriage was quietly bleeding out. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, pretending to sleep. That's when I heard it, a whisper. Not mine, not the wind, from the hallway. At first, I thought I'd imagined it. Then I heard my husband's voice, Darren's low, excited, almost giddy. Yeah, Moms, yeah, I know, he whispered. My heart skipped. Darren never whispered on the phone. He was loud, careless, confident. Whispering meant secrets. I didn't move, didn't breathe. You're right, he continued. We have to do this clean, no drama. Clean, do what clean? There was a pause, then a woman's voice, sharp and familiar. His mother, Celeste Price. I've spoken to the lawyer, she said. He says timing is everything. She must not suspect a thing. My fingers curled into the sheets. Darren chuckled softly. She won't. Naomi still trusts me. Same as always, something cold slid down my spine. 25 years of marriage, and he was talking about me like a project, like a problem to manage. What about the condo? Celeste asked. I held my breath. It's fine, Darren said quickly. Both our names are on it. After the party, she'll be too shocked to fight back. The party, our silver wedding anniversary. I swallowed hard. Celeste hummed approvingly. Good, public pressure works wonders. Women like her hate embarrassment. Women like her, women like me. The hallway floor creaked. Darren ended the call and walked back toward the bedroom. I shut my eyes just in time, slowing my breathing, pretending I was deep asleep. He slid into bed carefully, but his body was stiff, restless, charged with something ugly and excited. I lay there beside him, my husband of 25 years, realizing I was sleeping next to a stranger. Morning came too fast. Darren woke up smiling. Morning, babe, he said, leaning down to kiss my cheek. He smelled different, sharper, expensive, unfamiliar. Morning, I replied, studying him. Big day, he said brightly. Why don't we finalize the anniversary plans today? I want everything perfect. Perfect. In 2.5 decades, Darren had never cared about perfect. I was the planner, he was the critic. Now suddenly, he was Mr. Romance. I nodded slowly, sure. He grabbed his jacket, humming like a man who'd already won something. As he headed for the door, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. A notification lit up the screen. Reminder, call S, 11 a.m. S not work. Not family, just S. My stomach tightened. When Darren came back for his keys, I casually asked, hey, quick question, who's S? He froze, just for half a second. Then he laughed too fast. Oh, that, Sanchez, guy from Seattle. Consulting thing, a lie. I'd seen that twitch before, the tiny flicker in his left eye. Same tell for 25 years. Got it, I said calmly. He smiled, relieved, kissed my forehead, and rushed out. The door closed. And the silence came rushing back in. I stood by the window, watching him disappear into the morning traffic, my reflection staring back at me, a woman who suddenly felt like her life was standing on a trapdoor. Something was coming. Something big, and whatever Darren and his mother were planning, I wasn't meant to survive it unscathed, but they had no idea I was already awake. That phone, that reminder, that whisper in the dark. And I had a nasty feeling that S wasn't a man and wasn't just a phone call. The moment Darren's car disappeared down the street, the condo felt different, too quiet, too still, like the walls were holding their breath. I stood there longer than I meant to, staring at the gray October sky over Georgetown, replaying every word I'd heard the night before. Do this clean, public pressure. She won't fight back. After 25 years, they thought I wouldn't fight. I laughed under my breath, but it came out thin and shaky. I moved through the condo on autopilot, watering the plants by the window, straightening pillows that didn't need straightening. My hands needed something to do because my mind was spiraling. Late night calls, sudden affection, a mystery S, and now the anniversary party he suddenly cared so much about. That's when the knock came, sharp, confident, uninvited. I already knew who it was. Celeste Price never waited to be asked in. I opened the door, and there she stood, perfectly styled silver hair, pearl earrings, that same frozen smile she'd worn for decades. Naomi, dear, she said, gliding past me into the condo. I was just in the neighborhood. Of course you were. Darren at work, she asked, scanning the living room like an appraiser. Yes, I replied. Long day ahead. Well, success doesn't rest, she said, settling into my armchair like it belonged to her, especially at his age. At his age, Darren was 53. Somehow, she said it like he was on borrowed time. So, she continued, folding her hands, are you excited about the anniversary? I am, I said carefully. It's a big milestone. Indeed, 25 years. She smiled thinly. Long enough for people to reflect. There it was. The edge beneath the sugar. She glanced around again, eyes landing on the bookshelves, the art on the walls, all chosen by me, all paid for by my parents years ago. You know, she said lightly, I've been thinking about the future. My shoulders tensed. Darren isn't young anymore, she went on, and without children, well, things should be planned properly. Planned. For whom? I asked. She waved a hand. Family, nephews, blood. What nephews? I said. Darren doesn't have children. She smiled like I was slow. Mine do. I placed my teacup down carefully. And why would our assets go to your nephews? Her eyes flickered just a bit. Well, if something were to happen, she said casually, it's better than letting the government take it, don't you think? Something were to happen. I met her gaze. Our condo paperwork is in the safe. Oh, she asked too quickly. Good to know. Silence stretched between us. She stood abruptly. Well, I won't keep you. Just wanted to check in. Big week ahead. At the door, she paused. Naomi, dear, change is hard for women like you. But sometimes it's necessary. Women like me. The door clicked shut behind her. I stood there for a long moment, my heart pounding. Late night calls, lawyer talk, property questions. This wasn't paranoia anymore. This was a plan. I went straight to Darren's home office. His laptop sat open on the desk. I typed the password without thinking, the date we met. Access denied. My stomach dropped. In 25 years, Darren had never changed his password. I tried his birthday, nothing, his mother's, nope, then instinct kicked in. I typed our wedding date backward. The screen unlocked, my chest tightened as the browser history loaded. Search after search stared back at me like a confession. Divorce asset protection, how to keep condo in divorce, spousal rights loopholes, waiver of marital property. My hands began to shake. This wasn't a rough patch, this was premeditated. I scrolled further, dates, times. Pages bookmarked, 2 weeks of planning, while kissing me goodnight, while smiling at breakfast, while pretending to care. My phone buzzed suddenly, making me jump. Candace, I answered. Hey, her voice was rushed. Naomi, I don't know how to say this. Say it, I whispered. I saw Darren yesterday at Tyson's Galleria. My stomach sank. He wasn't alone. I closed my eyes. What did she look like? Blonde, early 30s, expensive coat. They were very close, looking at rings. Rings. Naomi, Candace said softly, I'm so sorry. Thank you for telling me, I replied, my voice eerily calm. After I hung up, I sat there in the quiet condo, staring at Darren's laptop screen. They thought I was clueless. They thought I was weak. They were wrong, because at that exact moment, something inside me hardened, and I knew one thing for sure. If Darren wanted a performance at our anniversary, I'd make damn sure the spotlight wasn't only on me. A secret lover, a lawyer, a mother pulling strings, and Darren still thought I was walking into that anniversary blind. That night, Darren came home like nothing had happened. Same confident stride, same easy smile. Same lie wrapped in cologne and charm. He walked in holding a massive bouquet of roses and a gold-trimmed box of chocolates, the kind you only buy when you're trying to cover something up. For my one and only, he said smoothly, leaning in to kiss me. One and only. The words almost made me laugh. Wow, I said, forcing a smile. What's the occasion? Our anniversary week, he replied. I figured we should celebrate early. Celebrate or distract, I watched him carefully as he moved around the kitchen, humming like a man who had already mentally checked out of his marriage. We should talk, I said casually, pouring wine. His shoulders stiffened just for a second. Talk about what? He asked, reaching for the TV remote. About us, the future. He turned the volume up slightly. Classic Darren drowned out discomfort with noise. Come on, Naomi, he said lightly. Why get heavy now? The party's in a week. Let's not ruin the mood. After the party, the phrase echoed in my head like a warning siren. Okay, I said softly. After the party, his relief was instant. That was when I knew. Whatever he planned to do to me, it was happening in front of people. I didn't sleep much. Around 3 o'clock a.m., I heard it again. Whispers. I stayed perfectly still, listening as Darren crept into the hallway. Yeah, Mom, he murmured. Everything's set. I pressed my ear closer to the bedroom door. She still doesn't suspect anything, he continued. She thinks it's just a celebration. A pause. No, she won't refuse. After what I'm going to say, she'll be too embarrassed to argue. Embarrassed, public humiliation. That lawyer you recommended, Darren added, he'll be waiting nearby, right? Another pause. Good, clean and fast. She signs, she moves out, and that's it. Moves out of the condo my parents gave me, out of the life I helped build. Out of my own damn home. I stepped back quietly, heart pounding, rage burning hot and sharp in my chest. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a setup. The next morning, Darren left early. I've got a meeting, he said, grabbing his jacket. A meeting. At exactly 11 o'clock a.m., the house phone rang. Darren had forgotten his cell phone on the counter. I didn't answer, but the voicemail clicked on. Darren, it's Mom, Celeste's voice said crisply. I spoke to Mr. Hayes. Everything is ready. The key is timing. She must stay calm until the very end. Mr. Hayes, the mystery S wasn't Sanchez. It was Sierra and Hayes. I stood there, phone in hand, my chest tight, my vision narrowing. They weren't just planning a divorce. They were planning my erasure. I picked up Darren's phone, 6-digit passcode. I tried our anniversary, nothing. Then something hit me sharp and bitter. March 8th, the screen unlocked, text messages flooded in. Sierra, I'm tired of hiding. Darren, just a little longer. After the anniversary, everything's ours. Sierra. You promised me that condo. Darren, I know Mom's handling it. She won't fight back. Won't fight back. I scrolled further. Darren, if she refuses to sign, we'll pressure her. Sierra, public pressure works. My hands trembled. They were going to destroy me emotionally, strip me legally, and replace me publicly, all in one night. I copied every message, every date, every name. Then I put the phone back exactly where it was. They still thought I was asleep. They had no idea I was wide awake. That afternoon, I made one call. Aisha, I said when she answered. Naomi's, long time, she replied warmly. I need a lawyer, I said, and I need you. Her tone changed instantly. Come by my office tonight. For the first time in days, I felt something shift. I wasn't panicking anymore. I wasn't crying. I was thinking, planning, because if Darren wanted a spectacle, then I'd make sure the final act wasn't his. The trap was set, the party was booked, the audience was ready. They thought I was walking into my downfall. They had no idea I was walking in with receipts. Aisha Cole's office sat on the 22nd floor of a glass tower downtown, the kind of place that made you feel small the moment you stepped inside. Floor-to-ceiling windows, clean lines, quiet power. I hadn't been there in years. But the second she saw my face, Aisha knew something was wrong. Damn, she said softly, standing up from her desk. You look like someone just had the rug pulled out from under their life. That obvious? I tried to smile. She shut the door, locked it, and motioned for me to sit. All right, she said, crossing her arms. Start from the top and don't sugarcoat it. So I didn't. I told her everything. The whispers at night, Celeste's visit, the secret searches. Sierra, the lawyer, the plan to humiliate me in public and push me into signing away my rights. Aisha didn't interrupt once. Her jaw tightened with every sentence. When I finished, she exhaled slowly. Naomi, your husband isn't just cheating, he's plotting. I know. The good news, she continued, is that plotting usually leaves a paper trail, and idiots like Darren always underestimate women they think are safe. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Tell me about the condo, she said, exactly how it was bought. My parents gifted the money, I replied. 2005, Darren's name was added later. Aisha's eyebrows lifted. That's huge. What does that mean? I asked. It means, she said carefully, that condo might not be marital property at all. My heart skipped. If we can prove it was a premarital gift to you, she continued, then he has no automatic claim. For the first time in weeks, something warm spread through my chest. But, Aisha added, holding up a finger, he and his mother are clearly planning to ambush you emotionally. That's the real danger. How? I asked. Public accusations, character assassination. Making you look unstable or guilty so you'll panic and sign whatever they put in front of you. That's exactly what Darren had planned. So what do? I asked. Aisha leaned forward. You stay calm, you gather evidence. And you don't let them know you know. She grabbed a notepad. Step 1, she said, screenshot everything. Messages, call logs, emails. Done. Step 2, move half the joint savings into an account in your name. That's legal, I can do that tomorrow. Step 3, she paused, eyes sharp. You don't confront him, not yet. I nodded. Let them think you're walking into that anniversary blind, she said. People who think they've already won make mistakes. Mistakes, I liked that word. And Naomi, she added, whatever happens, do not sign anything under pressure, ever. I stood up, steadier than when I arrived. Thank you, I said quietly. She smiled, you're not alone, and trust me, men like Darren always trip over their own egos. When I got home, Darren was waiting, pacing, nervous energy buzzing off him. You look tired, he said bluntly, scanning my face. You should really take better care of yourself. There it was, the subtle digs, the slow teardown. I'm fine, I replied evenly. He shrugged. I'm just saying 50 isn't forgiving. Women need to try harder. I stared at him, wondering how I'd ever loved this man. That night while he showered, I logged into our joint account. $30,000 gone, withdrawn in chunks, jewelry stores, cash transfers. Legal fees, he was funding his new life with our money. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I opened a new account in my name and transferred my half. Let him burn through what was left. As I closed the laptop, something else caught my eye. An unopened envelope on the counter. International postage. Germany. My name typed neatly on the front. I picked it up, my hands suddenly cold. I had no idea then that this envelope was about to flip the entire power dynamic on its head. A secret inheritance, a ticking countdown, and a husband who still thought he held all the cards. I stared at that envelope like it might explode. Germany. The return address was stamped in neat black ink, official looking, heavy with importance. I hadn't been expecting anything from Europe, not bills, not letters, nothing. Slowly, I tore it open. Inside were documents, a lot of them, dense legal language, stamps, signatures, the kind of paperwork that only shows up when something serious has happened. My breath caught as I read the first line. Estate of Josephine Adler, my aunt, my father's older sister, Josephine. She'd always been the free spirit of the family, moved to Germany decades ago, never married, no kids, lived her life entirely on her own terms. We exchanged cards, emails, the occasional long phone call. I'd loved her fiercely. And now you are named the sole beneficiary. I had to sit down. My heart thudded in my ears as I flipped through the pages. A condo in Munich. A bank account, another property, Miami Beach, Florida. Numbers swam in front of my eyes. This wasn't a small inheritance. This was life-changing. I pressed my palm against my mouth, tears burning not just from shock but from grief. Josephine was gone. I hadn't even known she was sick. And yet she'd thought of me. Of all people, I whispered, "Thank you, Aunt Jo." Then reality hit. If Darren knew about this, no, he couldn't know, not now. I slid the documents back into the envelope and locked them in the safe, the same safe Celeste had asked about. The irony almost made me laugh. That evening, Darren came home buzzing with energy. "Good news," he announced, loosening his tie. "I booked the ballroom." "Ballroom," I echoed. "The Watergate Hotel," he said proudly. "Big, elegant, about 100 guests, 100 witnesses. And how much is that?" I asked carefully. He waved it off. "Don't worry about it. Of course not. This anniversary is about appearances," he added. "People need to see how solid we are." I looked at him. "Solid," he smiled thinly. "Exactly." My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Aisha. "Aisha, any updates?" I typed back quickly. "Me, they're escalating. Big party, public." Her reply came instantly. "Aisha, good, let them. Power loves an audience until it doesn't." The next day, Celeste showed up again. This time, she brought a gift. "Naomi, dear," she said sweetly, handing me an envelope. "I thought this might be helpful." Inside was a business card. "Hayes and Associates, family law free consultation." My jaw tightened. The same lawyer Darren was using to gut me. "How thoughtful," I said evenly. "I worry about you," she replied. "Divorce can be confusing for women." For women, I met her eyes. "Funny, I wasn't aware I was getting divorced." She smiled, slow and sharp. "Life has a way of surprising us. So did I." After she left, I found Darren's jacket hanging by the door. Something made me check the pockets. Inside, a crumpled receipt. "Hayes and Associates, retainer paid," and beneath it a note. "After the toast." I exhaled slowly. They weren't even hiding it anymore. That night I barely slept. At 2:30 a.m., Darren was on the phone again. "She'll sign," he whispered confidently. "She hates scenes." I stared at the ceiling, wide awake. Hates scenes. He had no idea, because tomorrow I had an appointment of my own. Not with Hayes, with the lawyer who'd handled our condo purchase all those years ago, the man who knew exactly where the money came from. And if my instincts were right, Darren's entire plan was built on a lie. An inheritance Darren didn't know about, a condo he thought he owned, and a lawyer who remembered the truth. The law office smelled like old books and polished wood. Mr. Perry hadn't changed much in 20 years. Same calm eyes, same deliberate movements, same voice that made chaos sound manageable. "Naomi Sterling," he said, standing up slowly. "It's been a long time, too long," I replied, shaking his hand, "and I wish this visit were under better circumstances." His expression softened. "Sit down, tell me what you need." I didn't waste time. "Do you remember the condo on M Street?" I asked. "The one my husband and I live in?" Mr. Perry nodded. "Of course, Georgetown, very nice unit." "I need to know exactly how it was purchased," I said carefully. "And whose money was used?" He frowned slightly and opened a filing cabinet, pulling out a thick folder. "Let's see," he murmured, flipping through the pages. "Ah, here it is." He stopped. His finger tapped the page. "Well, this is interesting." My pulse jumped. "What is?" "The purchase funds," he said, looking up at me. "They came directly from your parents' account. There's a deed of gift." A wave of warmth spread through my chest. "And Darren?" I asked. "He wasn't part of the original transaction," Mr. Perry said. "His name was added 2 months later after the marriage." I swallowed. "So legally," he said firmly, "this condo is a premarital gift to you. In the event of a divorce, it's your separate property." I closed my eyes for a second. They'd been planning to kick me out of a home that was never his. "Can you document this?" I asked. "Absolutely," Mr. Perry replied. I'll prepare a formal statement. I stood and shook his hand again. You have no idea what this means to me, he smiled knowingly. Actually, I think I do. When I got home, Darren was rehearsing in the living room. I froze in the hallway listening. People change, he said aloud, practicing, and sometimes you have to admit when something no longer works. My hands clenched. I thanked Naomi for the years, he continued, but honesty demands the truth, the truth. He had no idea how close the real truth was to detonating. That night, I gathered all my important documents into a single folder: condo papers, screenshots, inheritance notice. I was done reacting, I was preparing. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Sierra, I know you know, let's not make this ugly. I stared at the screen, cold fury creeping up my spine, so she knew about me. I typed back only one line: you're already late to the story. She didn't reply. By the end of the day, Mr. Perry emailed me the document, clear, official, unmistakable. The condo was mine. I printed 3 copies and slid them into my folder. That evening, Darren came home glowing. Everything's set, he announced. This anniversary will be unforgettable. I smiled calmly. Yes, I said. It will, because while he thought he was about to erase me, I was about to introduce everyone to the woman he underestimated. The strange thing about betrayal is this: once you see it clearly, the fear disappears. In its place comes focus. That Monday morning, I woke up calm, not numb, not broken, just sharp. Like my mind had finally snapped into alignment. Darren was already up, standing in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie. You should really consider getting back to the gym, he said casually, not looking at me. Stress ages people fast. There it was again, the slow erosion. I smiled. I'll keep that in mind. He nodded, satisfied, and grabbed his briefcase. Big week, he added. Lots of pressure, pressure. He had no idea what pressure actually felt like. As soon as he left, I went to the bank. New account, my name only. The teller smiled politely as I slid the forms across the counter. I'd like to transfer half the balance from a joint account, I said. She nodded. Perfectly fine. Watching those numbers move felt like reclaiming oxygen. Next stop, the notary, not the one tied to Darren, a neutral one. I had copies certified, stamped, sealed paper armor. At work, I asked for a private meeting with my boss. Mr. Budrow leaned back in his chair, studying me. Is everything okay, Naomi? I'm heading into a difficult personal situation, I said carefully. It may get public, he frowned. Divorce? Yes, he sighed. I'm sorry. For what it's worth, you're one of the strongest professionals here. Whatever happens, your position is secure. Relief washed through me. One less thing Darren could threaten. That evening, Celeste called. Naomi, she said sweetly, I was just thinking about the seating arrangements. Of course you were. I hope you don't mind, she continued, but Darren invited some younger colleagues. Younger. Translation: Sierra. Not at all, I replied pleasantly. The more the merrier. There was a pause, then a small, suspicious laugh. Well, she said, you're handling this with such grace. Grace. They mistook silence for weakness. That night, Darren stayed out late. When he came home, his phone buzzed. He smiled at the screen. That smile used to belong to me. I didn't flinch. I didn't ask. I was done giving him pieces of myself he didn't deserve. Instead, I opened my laptop and researched something else: inheritance protection during divorce. Every answer reassured me. What my aunt left me was mine alone, untouchable, untraceable. I closed the laptop and finally slept deeply, peacefully, because for the first time in weeks, I wasn't waiting for the knife. I was waiting for my turn. The party was days away. The players were in position. And Darren still believed he controlled the narrative. The closer the anniversary got, the louder Darren became, not with words, with confidence, the kind that only shows up when someone thinks the finish line is right in front of them. He strutted around the condo like a man already living in his next life, checking emails, taking calls in corners, lowering his voice whenever I walked by. I let him underestimate me. Thursday morning, I logged into our joint account one last time. The balance was bleeding. Another $8,000 gone. Jewelry store in Tyson's Corner, hotel deposit, consulting fees. I took screenshots. Then I shut it down emotionally. Whatever he burned now was on him. At lunch, Candace met me at our usual cafe. She studied me carefully. You're weirdly calm. I know, I said, stirring my coffee. It's like the storm already passed. She hesitated. I saw her again, my hand stilled. Sierra, she nodded. At the hotel with Darren, they were arguing. I raised an eyebrow. About what? Candace leaned in. Money, she was mad. Said something about promises and moving in. Of course she was. Promises built on lies always collapse first. That evening, Darren announced, Mom's coming over tonight. Lovely, I replied. Celeste arrived buzzing with excitement, eyes bright, movements sharp. Darren, did you rehearse your speech? She asked immediately. Every word, he said proudly. Speech. She turned to me. Naomi, dear, you'll be so proud of him. I smiled politely. I'm sure. She leaned closer. After all, closure is important. Closure, such a clean word for cruelty. Later, while they whispered in the living room, I packed a small overnight bag. Not to leave, just in case. Independence isn't panic, it's preparation. That night, I received an email from Germany. The bank acknowledged my inheritance claim. Funds would unlock soon. I stared at the numbers, heart steady. I was already free, I just hadn't stepped into it yet. Darren came to bed late. You excited for Saturday? He asked. Very, I said honestly. He smiled, thinking it meant what he wanted it to mean. It didn't. I turned off the light, staring into the dark. 3 days left. 3 days until Darren learned a painful lesson. Confidence without facts is just arrogance in a suit. A speech rehearsed, a mistress growing impatient, and a woman ready to flip the script. Friday arrived wrapped in fake smiles and forced politeness. Darren was unusually attentive that morning, too attentive. He made coffee, complimented my dress, even asked if I needed anything from the store. The performance was almost impressive. You look nice today, he said, lingering a second too long. Thank you, I replied. So do you, he smiled, clearly pleased. He had no idea it was the last compliment I'd ever give him. By noon, my phone buzzed nonstop. Caterers, hotel staff, guest confirmations. 100 people, 100 witnesses. Perfect. In the afternoon, I took a quiet walk through Georgetown, past the bakery where Darren and I once argued over pastries, past the park where we talked about children we never had, past the life I was about to leave behind. I wasn't sad, I was done. That evening, Celeste called again. Nervous? She asked sweetly. Not at all, I replied. A pause. Well, she said slowly, some things can't be undone. You're right, I agreed. She didn't know how true that was. Later, Darren locked himself in the study. I stood outside the door and listened. I endured, he practiced. I sacrificed, and now I choose happiness. Endured, I shook my head. Before bed, I laid everything out on the table, documents. Printouts, certified statements. My inheritance papers sat on top, untouchable. I slid them into my purse. Tomorrow they would come with me. As I turned off the light, Darren whispered, whatever happens tomorrow, I hope we can stay civilized. I looked at him in the dark. I hope you get exactly what you earn, I said calmly. He laughed softly, misunderstanding everything. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, the clock ticked. Midnight passed. The last quiet night of my old life was over. Tomorrow, the truth would have a microphone. The Watergate Hotel glowed like a movie set that night. Crystal chandeliers spilled light across the marble floors, casting reflections that shimmered like something unreal. Valets moved with practiced precision, doors opening before anyone even reached for a handle. Soft music floated through the air, elegant and expensive. Everything about the place whispered power, wealth, and image. Exactly what Darren wanted people to associate with his life. As we stepped onto the red carpet that led into the ballroom, Darren squeezed my hand just a little tighter than necessary. His smile was wide, polished, effortless, the smile he wore when he was performing. You okay? He asked softly, eyes scanning the room even as he spoke, already aware of who was watching. I'm great, I said, meeting his gaze. And for once, I wasn't lying. The ballroom opened before us in a sweep of white linens and silver accents. Round tables stretched across the room, each one perfectly arranged. Champagne flutes clinked. Laughter rose and fell in waves. At least 100 guests filled the space, friends, colleagues, extended family, acquaintances who barely knew us but loved a good party. 100 people, 100 witnesses. People who believed they were here to celebrate 25 years of marriage. People who had no idea they were about to witness its autopsy. Darren walked with confidence, stopping every few steps to shake hands, accept congratulations, pose for photos. He basked in it. This was his element: attention, admiration, validation. He nodded graciously as people praised his dedication, his success, his beautiful marriage. I let him enjoy it. I scanned the room slowly, deliberately, my calm almost startling even to myself. That's when I saw her, Sierra. She stood near the bar like she had every right to be there, dressed in a sleek black gown that hugged her figure perfectly. Her blonde hair fell in smooth waves over her shoulders, styled with care. Her posture was confident, relaxed, someone who believed she was about to step fully into a life she'd already rehearsed in her head. She laughed a little too loudly at something one of Darren's coworkers said, resting her fingers lightly on his arm. Possessive, familiar, practiced. She wasn't hiding, she didn't need to. Darren leaned closer to me, his voice low, casual, like he was commenting on the weather. I'd like you to meet my new assistant later, he said. Sierra, she's very talented, assistant. The word landed between us like a joke no one else could hear. I smiled politely, the way women are trained to do. I'm sure she is. He didn't notice anything unusual in my tone. Why would he? He still believed I was the woman he could manage. Celeste appeared beside him moments later, radiant and energized. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, her eyes bright with anticipation. Everything looks wonderful, she said, surveying the room, just as planned. Planned. She turned her gaze to me then, studying my face carefully, searching for nerves, for trembling hands, for tears, for cracks. She found nothing. Dinner was served shortly after. Plates arrived in synchronized waves. Wine was poured generously. Conversation grew louder, looser. One speech followed another, friends reminiscing, coworkers praising Darren's ambition, relatives talking about true partnership and lasting love. Each word landed with delicious irony. I watched Darren as the night progressed. With every glass of wine, his movements became sharper, more restless. He checked his watch repeatedly, cleared his throat, adjusted his jacket. His fingers brushed the microphone stand once, then again. He was counting down. Across the room, Sierra watched him openly now. When their eyes met, she smiled, a slow, confident smile filled with expectation. She thought this night ended with her stepping into the light. Finally, the host stepped forward, tapping the microphone lightly. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice echoing through the ballroom, may I have your attention, please? The room quieted. Tonight, we're here to celebrate a remarkable milestone, 25 years of marriage. Please join me in welcoming the man of the hour, Darren Price, as he says a few words about his wife. Applause erupted. Darren rose smoothly from his seat, straightening his jacket, adjusting his cufflinks. He smiled, nodding graciously, soaking it all in as he took the microphone. This was it, the moment he had rehearsed, the humiliation he had planned. The public ending he thought he controlled. I felt no fear, no panic, only clarity. The microphone was in his hand, the room was silent, and Darren Price believed this was his moment. Darren cleared his throat and tapped the microphone once. Then again, the sharp sound echoed through the ballroom, slicing cleanly through the chatter, the laughter, the clinking of glasses. It wasn't loud, but it was commanding. The kind of sound that demanded attention. The room obeyed instantly. Conversations died mid-sentence. Forks froze halfway to mouths. 100 faces turned toward him, smiling, curious, expectant, completely unaware they were about to be dragged into a battlefield. My friends, Darren began, his voice smooth, confident, perfectly practiced. Thank you all for coming tonight. 25 years, that's not a small number. Polite laughter rippled through the crowd. Applause followed, dutiful and warm. Darren smiled wider, feeding off it. A quarter of a century with one person, he continued, pacing just a step away from the table. Through ups and downs, successes and sacrifices. Sacrifices, the word was deliberate, weighted. Sharpened, I kept my face neutral, my hands folded calmly in my lap. My heart wasn't racing. My pulse wasn't spiking. I felt strangely removed, like I was watching a scene unfold from the outside. I've spent a lot of time thinking about what those years really meant, Darren said, his tone softening, almost reflective. About honesty, about courage, about admitting when something no longer works. A ripple of confusion passed through the guests. People shifted in their seats, smiles faltered, eyebrows knitted together. Celeste, seated near the front, straightened slightly. Her lips curled into a faint, satisfied half-smile. She knew what was coming. Life teaches you, Darren went on, voice growing stronger, more assured, that staying in something out of habit isn't noble. He paused. It's dishonest. The room went quiet, not polite quiet, uncomfortable quiet. I won't pretend anymore, Darren continued. For years I felt trapped, unfulfilled, like I was carrying a weight alone. A murmur spread across the tables. Is this a joke? Someone whispered, too loud. I gave everything, Darren said, warming to his performance now. I sacrificed, I showed up, I stayed, but some people, he turned slightly, letting his gaze drift strategically toward me. Some people don't grow. A sharp inhale rippled through the room. They don't evolve, he continued. They get comfortable being, he paused again. Ordinary, the word landed like a slap across the face, ordinary. I heard Marina gasp softly at the next table. Someone else muttered, what the hell, under their breath. Darren raised his hand, silencing the room with the confidence of a man who believed he owned it. Naomi and I, he said firmly, are no longer compatible, and tonight I'm choosing honesty with you and with myself. Then he turned fully toward me. This marriage is over. The reaction was instant, gasps. Forks clattering against plates. A chair scraping loudly as someone stood halfway up before sitting back down. Celeste nodded slowly, approval written plainly across her face. For 25 years, Darren continued, his voice hard now, stripped of any pretense, I stayed out of loyalty, but loyalty shouldn't be a prison. He exhaled dramatically, as if relieved. I'm filing for divorce. The word echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. Divorce. I felt dozens of eyes snap toward me. They were waiting for tears, for shaking hands, for a public breakdown. They got none. And since honesty matters, Darren added, clearly emboldened by the shock he'd created, we'll be dividing our assets fairly. Naomi will be moving out of the condo. It's time for a new chapter. That did it. You don't do this at an anniversary, someone shouted. Are you out of your damn mind? Another voice cut in. Darren ignored them all. I deserve happiness, he said coldly. And I won't apologize for choosing it. Then, as if on cue, because of course it was rehearsed, Sierra stepped forward just enough to be seen. Young, polished, waiting. Her presence sent a fresh wave of whispers through the room. Darren gestured subtly in her direction. Some people, he said pointedly, understand what partnership really means. The implication was unmistakable. The humiliation was deliberate, calculated, timed to perfection. I pushed my chair back and stood. The sound echoed louder than the microphone ever could. The room fell dead silent. Darren turned toward me, surprise flickering across his face. This wasn't in his script. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Naomi, he said through clenched teeth, forcing a smile, please let me finish. I smiled back, softly, calmly. No, I said, now it's my turn. I reached for the microphone. His hand tightened around it. The room leaned in. Every instinct in the crowd screamed that something had shifted. Because everyone could feel it now, this wasn't ending the way Darren planned. The insult had been delivered. The audience was stunned, and I was about to speak. For half a second, Darren didn't let go of the microphone. It was a tiny moment, almost invisible, but I saw it. His smile twitched, his jaw tightened. His eyes flicked around the ballroom, scanning faces, recalculating, searching for control that was already slipping through his fingers. That hesitation told me everything. Then I gently wrapped my fingers around the mic and pulled. He released it. No argument, no protest, just surrender. That alone said more than any speech ever could. I turned to the room. 100 people, 100 witnesses. Faces frozen in expressions of shock, confusion, discomfort, and dawning outrage. Some mouths hung open, others pressed into tight lines. A few people leaned forward, instinctively sensing that whatever came next mattered. I took a breath, not because I was nervous, but because silence used correctly is power. Thank you, Darren, I said calmly, my voice steady, unshaken. That was very revealing. A few nervous chuckles fluttered through the room, quickly dying out. I'd like to clear up a few things, I continued, adjusting the microphone slightly. Since honesty is suddenly so important tonight, Darren frowned, stepping toward me. Naomi, this isn't— Oh, it is, I interrupted gently, still smiling. You chose the stage. I'm just using it. I turned away from him and addressed the guests directly. For the past 3 weeks, I said evenly, I've known about the affair. The reaction was immediate. Gasps burst from every corner of the ballroom. Chairs scraped. Someone whispered, oh my God. Sierra went rigid near the bar, her confidence evaporating in an instant. I've known about the late-night phone calls, I continued. The secret meetings, the sudden hotel charges. And the lawyer Darren hired to ambush me after this very speech. Every head turned. In the back corner of the room, a man in a dark suit shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Hayes. Yes, I said, nodding in his direction. That lawyer. He was supposed to be waiting nearby with divorce papers, ready to make me sign while I was still in shock. The ballroom erupted. You planned this? Someone shouted. That's vile, another voice snapped. Darren rushed forward. She's lying, he said sharply. She's emotional, confused. I tilted my head slightly. Am I? I opened my purse and removed a neatly organized folder. The sound of paper sliding free was louder than the music ever had been. Let's talk about the condo, I said. The one Darren just announced I'd be moving out of. I held up a certified document. This condo was purchased with money gifted to me by my parents before my marriage. Darren's name was added later. I let the words settle. Legally, it is my premarital property. The room fell dead silent. Darren's face drained of color so fast it was almost frightening. That's not possible, he whispered. Oh, it is, I replied, and it was confirmed this week by the very lawyer who handled the purchase. I flipped to another page, and since we're being transparent, I continued, 3 weeks ago, I also received an inheritance from my aunt in Germany. A collective inhale swept through the crowd. A condo in Munich, I said, another luxury condo in Miami Beach, and over $1 million in cash. You could hear people breathing. I turned back to Darren. So tell me, I said calmly, what exactly were you planning to divide? Sierra's mouth fell open. Celeste shot to her feet. This is outrageous. No, I said sharply, meeting her gaze for the first time that evening. What's outrageous is plotting to humiliate a woman you thought was powerless. Applause broke out, not polite applause. Angry applause, and one more thing, I added, raising my voice slightly over the noise. This party, I gestured around the ballroom. It cost $45,000, paid from our joint account. An account Darren has been draining to fund his affair. The room exploded. You used her money? Unbelievable. What kind of man does this? Sierra stepped toward Darren, her voice shaking. You said not now, he snapped, panic bleeding through his tone. I returned the microphone to the stand. I won't ruin your evening any further, I said to the guests, but now you know the truth. I turned to Darren. You're free, I said quietly, just not in my home and not on my dime. Then I walked away. Behind me, the ballroom erupted into chaos. Shouting, arguments, accusations. I didn't look back. Because once the truth is spoken, the lie collapses on its own. The moment I crossed the ballroom doors, the noise behind me detonated. Not polite chatter, not awkward murmurs, pure chaos, shouting, accusations, chairs scraping violently against the marble floor. Someone yelling Darren's name like it was a curse rather than a person. The heavy doors swung shut behind me, muting the sound, but not the energy. I could still feel it radiating through the walls, crawling up my spine like heat. I stood there in the hallway for a long second, breathing, not shaking, not crying, not second-guessing a single word I'd said, just steady. When I finally moved, it wasn't rushed, it wasn't dramatic, I simply walked. Inside the ballroom, Darren's carefully constructed world was imploding at record speed. What the hell was that? One of his coworkers shouted, voice sharp with disbelief. You humiliate your wife in front of everyone? Another demanded. On your anniversary, Darren spun in circles, trying to answer everyone at once. You don't understand, she planned this. She manipulated the room. That inheritance story is a lie, he snapped, his voice cracking under pressure. She's twisting things. Then explain, the lawyer, Marina shot back instantly. Explain why he was sitting right there like a damn vulture. Every head turned at once. Mr. Hayes had already edged halfway toward the exit, his confident posture gone. His face was pale, collar dark with sweat. Oh no you don't, someone barked. You're not sneaking out of this. The attention snapped back to Darren like a spotlight. Near the bar, Sierra stood frozen, the confidence she'd worn like armor completely stripped away. You told me the condo was yours, she hissed at Darren, voice trembling with fury. You said she was clueless. Darren grabbed her arm instinctively. Not here, not now, she yanked it free. You used me, her voice carried. Heads turned, Celeste rushed forward, her composure cracking, voice sharp and shrill. This is all a misunderstanding. Naomi is emotional, a woman snapped back. She was calm as ice, you're the one scheming. Applause broke out again. Louder, angrier, not for Darren, against him. Outside, I stepped into the cool Washington night. The city glowed exactly as it always had, steady, indifferent, alive. Traffic moved. Laughter echoed from distant streets. Life continued, utterly unconcerned with the implosion happening behind me. A valet hurried over. Mrs. Sterling, yes, your car is ready. As I slid into the back seat, my phone began to vibrate nonstop in my purse. Candace. Aisha, coworkers, family members I hadn't spoken to in years. I didn't answer. Not yet. Tonight wasn't about explaining myself. It was about reclaiming myself. Back inside the ballroom, the fallout was accelerating. Mr. Budrow, Darren's CEO, stepped forward, his expression dark, controlled, furious beneath the surface. Darren, he said quietly, this was unacceptable. Sir, please, Darren stammered. This is a private matter. You made it public, Budrow cut in coldly. In a professional space, and you involved employees. Sierra flinched. We'll talk Monday, Budrow continued. But don't expect leniency. Darren swallowed hard. The smug certainty that had fueled him all night was gone, replaced with panic. The car pulled away from the hotel. I leaned back against the seat, watching the lights smear into long golden streaks against the glass. 25 years. And yet the weight was gone. Inside the ballroom, the damage was permanent. Sierra grabbed her purse abruptly. I'm leaving. Wait, Darren pleaded, desperation leaking into his voice. We can fix this. She laughed, short, sharp, bitter. Fix what? She snapped. You don't even have the condo. She turned toward Celeste. And you encouraged this. Celeste's face twisted. You little. Sierra didn't wait to hear the rest. She walked away, gone. Darren stood in the center of the room, surrounded by people but utterly alone. No applause, no allies, no script left to hide behind, just the truth echoing louder than his lies ever had. In the taxi, my phone rang again. This time I answered, Aisha, I said, you okay? She asked gently. I smiled to myself. I'm better than okay, she laughed softly. Good, because now the real consequences start. I looked out at the city, feeling lighter than I had in years. Let them, I said, the public fall was only the beginning. Legal reckoning was coming, and Darren was about to learn exactly what too late really meant. By the time I reached the condo, my phone was vibrating like it was about to shatter itself. Missed calls, voicemails, texts stacked on texts, notifications piling up faster than I could process. I didn't check them, not yet. I kicked off my heels by the door, set my purse down on the console table, and stood in the middle of the living room. My living room, the couch sat exactly where it always had. The art still hung on the walls I'd chosen. The soft glow from the city lights spilled through the windows like it always did. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had. The lie had been ripped out of the space. I exhaled slowly, poured myself a glass of water, my hands steady, my breathing even. Only then did I pick up my phone. Voicemail from Darren. Naomi, please just answer. We need to talk. Another followed immediately. This got out of hand. You blindsided me. Blindsided. The word was almost funny. I laughed once quietly, the sound sharp and hollow in the quiet condo. Back at the hotel, the disaster was still unfolding in real time. Guests hadn't rushed out, as Darren probably hoped they would. They lingered instead, clustering in small groups, whispering, dissecting every word, every look, every expression they'd witnessed. Phones were out now, recording, uploading, sharing. What did she say about the inheritance? Did you see his face when she mentioned the condo? This is going viral. No way this stays quiet. Darren stood near the head table, his earlier confidence completely gone. Sweat dotted his forehead. He tugged at his collar like it was choking him. This isn't fair, he kept repeating to anyone who would listen. She planned this. She set me up. No, Marina snapped back. You planned it. She just told the truth. Celeste darted between groups, trying desperately to regain control. Everyone, please, she said sharply. This is a private family matter. Private. You made it public, someone shot back. You don't get to pull that card now. Near the bar, Sierra cornered Darren, her face pale, eyes frantic. Tell me the inheritance isn't real, she demanded. Tell me she made it up. Darren didn't answer. That silence was louder than any confession. You promised me a future, Sierra hissed. You promised me that condo. I thought, Darren began weakly. You lied, she snapped. And I burned bridges for you. Her voice rose, sharp and panicked. I left my ex because of you. You said she was weak, that she'd fold. People nearby slowed, pretending not to listen while absorbing every word. Darren reached for her arm again. Lower your voice, she yanked away. Don't touch me. Then she turned toward the room, eyes blazing. You want the truth, she shouted. This man used his wife's money to buy me jewelry. He told me she was clueless. He said she'd sign whatever papers he put in front of her. The room froze. Celeste gasped. You ungrateful little, and you, Sierra fired back, pointing at her. You encouraged him. You called her disposable. The word hit the room like an explosion. Disposable. Back at the condo, I finally listened to a voicemail, not Darren's. It was Mr. Budrow. Naomi, he said carefully, I want you to know, after what happened tonight, you have my full support. Whatever you need from the company, time off, discretion, it's yours. I closed my eyes. Even in the wreckage, I wasn't alone. Back at the hotel, Darren's reputation was bleeding out faster by the minute. Someone pulled up a video on their phone. There it is, a man muttered. Already on TikTok. Look at the comments, another said, half shocked, half disgusted. They're brutal, Darren stared at the screen, hollow-eyed. Number silver anniversary scandal, number justice for Naomi, number public humiliation fail. He sank into a chair. Celeste's voice cracked. Dee, what did you do? He didn't answer, because for the first time there was nothing left to say. At 2:00 a.m., the condo door rattled. I didn't open it. Darren's voice came through the wood, raw, stripped of arrogance. Naomi, please. Just let me explain. Explain what? That he underestimated me, that he thought cruelty was strategy, that he mistook silence for stupidity. I leaned my forehead gently against the door. Go home, Darren, I said quietly. This is no longer your place. Silence followed, then footsteps retreating down the hallway. I locked the door, and for the first time in decades, I slept deeply. The scandal was public, the lies were exposed. And the legal consequences were just beginning. Morning light poured through the windows like nothing had happened. That was the strangest part. The city moved on without hesitation. Cars flowed through intersections. Coffee shops unlocked their doors. People hurried to work with headphones in, unaware or unconcerned that a 25-year marriage had detonated the night before. The world didn't pause for heartbreak, but Darren's world, that one was finished. By 9:00 a.m., my phone rang again. Aisha, court filings are already moving faster than I expected, she said, her voice crisp, energized. His lawyer panicked. Which one? I asked calmly, standing by the window. She let out a short laugh. Not Hayes, he disappeared, phones off, office voicemail is full. I smiled faintly. Figures, they're scrambling, Aisha continued. Darren tried to file first last night, emotionally driven. Sloppy, I leaned against the counter. What did he file? He listed the condo as marital property, she said. Bold, also stupid. And we challenged it immediately, she replied, with your documentation. Mr. Perry's statement is airtight. For the first time since this began, something warm spread through my chest. Not relief, vindication. That afternoon, Darren tried again. This time, he didn't knock, he called. I just want 5 minutes, he said, his voice thin, brittle. No lawyers, no fighting. I have nothing to say, I replied evenly. You humiliated me, he snapped suddenly, the edge cracking through. I paused. You humiliated yourself, I said quietly. I just refused to lie for you. Silence stretched, then softer, smaller. I didn't think you'd fight back. There it was, the truth he never meant to say out loud. I know, I replied. That was your biggest mistake. I ended the call. 2 hours later, we sat in a small conference room downtown. No audience, no drama, no theatrics, just law. The judge, a composed woman in her 60s, reviewed the documents carefully, reading line by line. Darren sat rigid beside his new attorney, jaw clenched, foot tapping uncontrollably. The condo, the judge said finally, adjusting her glasses, was purchased using gifted funds from the respondent's parents prior to marriage. Darren's lawyer shifted in his chair. It is therefore classified as separate property, she continued, not subject to division. Darren's face drained of color. But Your Honor, he started. Denied, she said flatly without looking up. I felt the pressure lift from my chest like air finally released from a sealed room. Then came the debts. Credit lines Darren had opened quietly, personal loans, cash advances. Aisha stood calmly, organized, precise. These funds were not used for family expenses, she stated. They were used for personal conduct unrelated to the marriage. The judge nodded slowly. Mr. Price, she said, looking directly at Darren, these debts are your sole responsibility. $38,000. All his, Darren swallowed hard. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited, not for him, for me. Mrs. Sterling, one called out, microphone extended. Do you have a statement? I paused. Yes, I said simply. Silence should never be mistaken for consent. Then I walked away. Behind me, Darren stood frozen on the steps. Celeste hovered beside him, pale, shaking. What are we going to do? She whispered. He didn't answer. Because now the law had spoken, and it said exactly what he'd refused to believe. Power built on deception collapses fast, and the bill always comes due. That night, back at the condo, I packed Darren's remaining belongings into boxes. Neatly, carefully, without anger, shoes, papers, clothes he'd stopped wearing months ago. I stacked the boxes by the door, not out of kindness, out of closure. When I locked the door behind me, keys cool in my palm, something settled inside my chest. I hadn't won, I had escaped, and sometimes that's better than victory. 3 weeks later, Darren barely recognized his own life. The man who once strode through glass-walled offices and five-star hotel lobbies now sat hunched at a narrow kitchen table in a cramped one-bedroom apartment on the edge of the city, his mother's place, staring at peeling wallpaper and a ceiling light that flickered every few seconds like it was mocking him. The silence was loud. Celeste's condo was gone, sold quickly, too quickly, not because she wanted to downsize or simplify, but because she had no choice. The debts had surfaced like sharks, circling all at once. Hayes had vanished completely, leaving behind unpaid invoices, half-filed motions, and legal confusion that no one wanted to clean up. Banks didn't care about explanations. They didn't care about intentions. They cared about numbers. And the numbers were brutal. Darren sat at the table, shoulders slumped, staring at the stacks of envelopes spread out in front of him. Final notice, past due, immediate action required, red ink everywhere. He rubbed his temples, head pounding, chest tight. How did this happen? He muttered to no one. Celeste stood by the sink, washing a mug that was already spotless. Her hands trembled slightly, the rhythm of water and porcelain too sharp in the quiet apartment. You rushed everything, she snapped without turning around. I told you to be careful. Darren let out a bitter laugh. No, he said flatly. You told me to pressure her, to humiliate her. To break her in public so she'd fold. Celeste froze. For the first time in her life, she had no comeback. The truth hung between them, heavy and undeniable. Meanwhile, my life had gone quiet, not empty, quiet. The kind of peace that only exists when you're no longer bracing for impact, no longer measuring every word, no longer waiting for someone else's mood to dictate your safety. I moved through the condo easily now. no tension. No second guessing, no tightness in my chest, just space. One morning, I sat at the kitchen counter with my laptop open and reread the email from Germany. The funds had been released, 7 figures. Transferred cleanly into my personal account. I stared at the confirmation screen for a long time, not in disbelief, not in greed, but in gratitude. Josephine hadn't just left me money, she'd left me freedom. At work, the shift was subtle but unmistakable. People looked at me differently now, with respect, with curiosity, with something close to admiration. Some whispered, some smiled knowingly. No one questioned my place. Marina stopped by my office one afternoon, closing the door behind her. "I just wanted to say," she said quietly, "that took guts." "Truth doesn't require courage," I replied, "just timing." She smiled, thoughtful. "Still, you changed something for a lot of us." After she left, I sat there for a moment longer, realizing something unexpected. My story wasn't just mine anymore. Back in Celeste's apartment, Darren's phone buzzed, unknown number. He hesitated before answering. "Mr. Price," a woman said briskly, professional, detached. "This is Human Resources from Sterling and Co. We've completed our internal review." His chest tightened instantly. "We appreciate your years of service," she continued, "but due to recent public conduct that reflects poorly on the company, your position is terminated effective immediately." Darren closed his eyes. "Is there any severance?" he asked quietly. A pause. "Minimal," she replied. "You'll receive details by email." The line went dead. Darren lowered the phone slowly, staring at nothing. Celeste turned toward him. "What is it?" He laughed, a hollow, broken sound that startled even him. "I'm unemployed," he said, "and unemployable." That night, sleep didn't come. Darren lay awake, replaying the moment over and over. The microphone, the folder. My calm voice dismantling him piece by piece. He had believed confidence was power. He had been wrong. On the other side of the city, I stood on my balcony, looking out over the lights of Georgetown. Aisha stepped beside me and handed me a glass of wine. "You okay?" she asked. "I am," I said honestly. For the first time in a long time, she raised her glass to silence breaking. I clinked mine against hers. To never underestimating a woman who has nothing left to lose. Somewhere across the city, Darren had lost his home, his job, his illusion of control, and soon he would lose the last thing he still thought he possessed, dignity. Darren learned quickly that humiliation doesn't end when the crowd leaves. It follows you. It slips into quiet moments, into empty rooms, into places where applause once lived. It waits patiently for you to notice that the world remembers, even when you wish it wouldn't. He discovered that the first time he tried to apply for a new job, he sat in his old car, the one asset he hadn't lost yet, parked beneath a flickering streetlight, refreshing his email like it might magically change if he stared at it hard enough. Application status declined. Again, he let out a slow breath, rubbed his face, and opened LinkedIn. The platform that once celebrated his promotions now felt hostile, unfamiliar. He scrolled. Operations Manager, Assistant Director. Senior Consultant, titles he once would have scoffed at. He clicked one, then another, then another. Each application felt heavier than the last. Then his phone buzzed, not a message, a notification, a tag. Someone had reposted the video. This time the angle was merciless, clear audio, close framing, his voice ringing through the ballroom with cruel precision. "I endured a colorless woman." The comments stacked beneath it like stones. "This man is trash. Imagine doing this at your anniversary. Justice for Naomi. Men like this should be unemployed." His chest tightened. His throat went dry. He threw the phone onto the passenger seat like it had burned him. The internet doesn't forget. At Celeste's apartment, the tension had become unbearable. The once commanding matriarch now paced a cramped living room, her sharp heels clicking against cheap flooring that still felt foreign beneath her feet. "They stare at me at the grocery store," she snapped one evening. "Whisper like I'm some villain." Darren barely looked up. "You helped plan it." "I protected my son," she shot back. "Or I thought I did." The silence that followed was thick. Two people trapped by their own choices. Late one night, Darren finally opened the letter he'd been avoiding. Final foreclosure notice. The house Celeste had sold in panic, the one she swore she'd never leave, had barely covered the debts. What remained loomed larger than ever. He did the math again, slowly, carefully. It didn't change. There was no miracle coming. Meanwhile, my life was opening instead of closing. I stood barefoot in a sleek Miami Beach condo, sunlight pouring across marble floors, ocean stretching endlessly beyond floor-to-ceiling glass. The inheritance property, empty, quiet, waiting. The realtor stood behind me, polite, professional. "You could rent it easily," she said, "or live here." I stepped onto the balcony. Salt air filled my lungs. The sound of waves steadied my breath. I said softly, "I'll stay a while." back in Washington, Darren sat in a rideshare waiting lot, staring at the app on his phone. Driver mode, online his finger hovered over the screen. He hesitated, then tapped accept. The irony burned. The man who once sneered at service work now depended on it. His first passenger slid into the back seat and glanced at him through the mirror. "Hey, didn't I see you in that viral video?" Darren forced a smile. Probably the rest of the ride passed in silence. That night he drove until exhaustion overtook him. Tips were low, ratings worse. His pride dissolved mile by mile. In Miami, I unpacked slowly. Books first, stacked carefully on clean shelves, then clothes light, simple, unburdened. Last, I placed a framed photo of Aunt Josephine on the counter. She smiled out at me, fierce, unapologetic, free. "You knew," I whispered. "Didn't you?" The ocean answered with waves. Aisha called that evening. "Final decree is ready," she said. "Judge signed everything." "How does it feel?" she asked. I thought for a moment. "Like I walked out of a burning building," I said. "And didn't look back," she laughed softly. "You didn't just escape, you rebuilt." In a dark parking lot miles away, Darren sat slumped in his car, forehead pressed against the steering wheel. He thought of one thing, not money. Not the condo, not the job. He thought of how calm I'd been, how certain, how final. And for the first time, understanding arrived, late and merciless. He hadn't lost me because I was weak. He lost me because I was strong enough to walk away. The past was collapsing behind him. The future was opening in front of me. And somewhere between those two truths, one final encounter was still waiting. Darren waited almost 6 months before reaching out, not because the urge wasn't there. It was every day, but because he didn't know how. Every version of the message in his head sounded wrong, too desperate, too apologetic, too self-pitying. Words felt cheap now, stripped of the authority they once carried. Still, one night parked between rides in a dimly lit lot, engine idling, he finally opened a blank email. The screen glowed, harsh and unforgiving. He stared at it for a long time before typing the first word. "Naomi," he paused, backspaced, typed it again. "Naomi," his fingers hovered, then continued. "I don't expect you to reply. I don't even expect you to read this. I just need to say it. You were right about everything." He stopped there, chest tightening, eyes burning. The cursor blinked like it was waiting to judge him. He swallowed and kept going. "I lost my job. I lost the house. I lost the respect of everyone who mattered. But that's not what hurts the most. What hurts is realizing I destroyed the one person who never tried to control me, only supported me." His hands shook now. "I convinced myself I was trapped. The truth is I was afraid, afraid of aging, afraid of being ordinary, afraid of myself. You deserved loyalty. I gave you cruelty. I don't ask for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I just hope you're happy." Darren, he reread it once, then again, then a third time. For the first time in his life, there was nothing he could soften, no angle to spin. No power left in the words. He hit send. The email whooshed away into the dark, swallowed by silence. 3 days later, I saw it. I was sitting on the balcony in Miami, barefoot, wrapped in the warm hush of early morning. Coffee steamed in my hand. The ocean stretched endlessly in front of me, pink and gold as the sun crept over the horizon. My laptop chimed softly. The subject line was simple. "I'm sorry. I didn't rush. I didn't brace myself." I opened it slowly. I read it once, then again, not with anger, not with satisfaction, but with distance. The words didn't pierce, they didn't reopen anything, they simply existed. A relic, proof that the man who once thought he owned the narrative finally understood it. I closed the laptop, sat there quietly for a long moment, then I archived the email, no reply, not because I was bitter, not because I wanted revenge, but because some chapters don't need an epilogue. Some endings don't require acknowledgement. That evening, I walked along the shoreline, the sand cool beneath my feet. Laughter drifted from nearby restaurants. Music spilled into the open air. Strangers passed, living their own stories, unburdened by mine. My phone stayed in my pocket, untouched. I breathed deeply. I was free. Back in Washington, Darren checked his inbox obsessively. Morning, night, nothing, no reply. No acknowledgement, just silence. And for the first time, he understood what real consequence felt like, not punishment, not humiliation, absence. He sat alone, staring out at the city lights and whispered the words again. "I'm sorry, but apologies don't reverse time. They don't undo choices. They don't rebuild what was burned. They only confirm regret. She didn't win. She didn't need to. She walked away whole, and that was everything." A year changed everything. Not in loud, cinematic ways, not with grand announcements or dramatic reversals, but in the quiet, irreversible ones, the kind of change that doesn't ask permission. I barely recognized the woman I had been 12 months ago, the one who measured her worth in compromises, who mistook endurance for love, who learned to stay silent because silence felt safer than conflict. That woman lived her life carefully. She thought peace meant shrinking. She was wrong. Miami became home faster than I ever expected, not because I was running from anything, but because, for the first time, I wasn't carrying anything heavy with me. My mornings began with long walks along the shoreline, bare feet sinking into cool sand, salt clinging to my skin. The air smelled clean, honest. The sun poured into the condo every morning like it belonged there, like it had been waiting. I learned how little space I actually needed once the weight was gone. No tightness in my chest, no second guessing my words, no tension humming under every conversation, just room. The inheritance was fully settled now. Accounts organized, properties secured, every document reviewed and locked down. For the first time in my life, money stopped feeling like survival and started feeling like possibility, not indulgence, choice. One afternoon, I sat across from a young woman named Anna in a quiet cafe near my building. Ceiling fans turned lazily above us. Espresso cups clinked softly in the background. She was a translator, sharp, curious, deeply underpaid, and burning with ideas she'd never been given space to use. "You're serious about starting a publishing house?" she asked, leaning forward, eyes bright with something that looked dangerously close to hope. "Yes," I said without hesitation. "European literature, small presses, voices people don't hear enough." She blinked once, then smiled slowly. "I've been waiting my whole career for someone to say that, so had I." Back in Washington, Darren's life continued to shrink, not dramatically, not all at once, gradually, ride after ride, tip after tip, long nights for very little return. The viral video faded from trending lists, replaced by newer scandals, louder messes. But memory is more stubborn than algorithms. People still recognized him. Sometimes a passenger would hesitate, squinting at the rearview mirror. "Didn't you?" Darren would nod once and keep driving. Celeste aged fast. Stress hollowed her cheeks. Her sharp edges dulled into something brittle. The certainty she once wielded like a weapon had dissolved into regret that followed her from room to room. One night, sitting across from her son at a chipped kitchen table, she finally said it out loud. "I was wrong." Darren didn't answer. He didn't need to. My publishing company launched quietly. 3 titles, small print runs. Carefully designed covers, thoughtful, precise translations. No hype, no shortcuts. Reviews trickled in, then poured, intimate, necessary, brave. I read them late at night, sitting on the couch with my laptop balanced on my knees, smiling to myself. This was the life I had postponed, not because I lacked ambition, but because I'd been busy surviving someone else's expectations. Aisha visited in the spring. She walked through the condo, taking it all in, the light, the open space, the calm, and laughed softly. "You look lighter," she said. "I am," I replied. "Turns out peace weighs nothing." We stood on the balcony as the sky shifted colors, glasses clinking gently. "To new chapters," she said. "To choosing yourself," I answered. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the ocean turned dark and endless, my phone buzzed, a message request from a name I hadn't expected. Sierra. I stared at it for a long moment, not with anger, not with fear, with curiosity. I hadn't thought about her in months, not really. She'd become part of a story I no longer lived inside. I didn't open the message right away. Some pasts don't knock loudly. They wait. The past was reaching out again. A message waited unread, and not every ending comes from anger. I didn't open Sierra's message right away. I let it sit there on my screen, glowing softly against the dark like a ghost from a life I had already buried. I could have dismissed it instantly, deleted it without reading, blocked her before a single word crossed my mind, but I didn't. Her name carried weight, not rage, not jealousy, memory, of manipulation disguised as affection, of lies wrapped in romance, of a woman who believed she was winning a prize only to discover the prize was hollow from the inside out. Eventually, curiosity won, not the desperate kind, but the calm, detached kind that comes when you're no longer afraid of what you might feel. I opened the message. "Sierra, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. I won't pretend I didn't play a role in what happened. I did, and I own that. But I wanted to tell you something, not for forgiveness, just for truth. He lied to me too. He told me you were cold, that you controlled him, that you'd already checked out of the marriage. I believed him because it was easier than questioning someone who promised me everything. I'm not proud of that. When you spoke that night, I saw it. The calm, the clarity, the strength. I realized I wasn't replacing you. I was being used to erase you. You didn't deserve what we did to you. I hope you're happy." Sierra, I read it once, then again, slowly, not searching for blame, not searching for validation, just letting it exist. Then I leaned back in my chair and looked out at the ocean. The waves rolled in and out with steady patience, indifferent to human drama, timeless in a way that made everything else feel small and temporary. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt finished, not numb, complete. I opened a reply window and typed a response, short, honest, unembellished. Me, I am happy. I hope you learned something from this. Take care. Then I blocked her. Not out of spite, not out of anger, but out of closure. Some doors don't need to be slammed, they just need to be closed. That night I slept deeply. No dreams, no echoes of old arguments, no rehearsed conversations, just rest. Across the country, Darren's life continued in muted shades of gray. He had moved out of his mother's apartment after one argument too many and into a small studio near the airport. Cheap rent, thin walls. A single window that looked out at concrete and headlights. No view. He drove mornings now, early shifts. Routine helped. Routine kept his thoughts orderly, manageable. The repetition of streets and traffic lights gave him something predictable to hold on to. One evening, an older woman slid into the back seat of his car. She smiled kindly, fastening her seatbelt. "Long day?" she asked. "Long life," Darren replied before he could stop himself. She chuckled softly. "Those usually teach the most." He nodded, eyes fixed on the road ahead. For the first time, he didn't resent the lesson, he simply acknowledged it. In Miami, my publishing house hosted its first small launch event. Nothing flashy. 20 people, wine poured into mismatched glasses, laughter filling the room, conversations about stories that mattered. Anna stood beside me, glowing with pride and disbelief. "We did this," she whispered. "Yes," I said, "we did." Someone raised a glass. "To new beginnings." I smiled and lifted mine. "To endings, too." Later that night, alone on the balcony, I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who would have begged for explanations, for apologies, for fairness. I didn't need any of that anymore, because fairness isn't something someone hands you. It's something you claim. My phone buzzed once more. A notification from my bank. Transfer complete. Everything settled, everything mine. I closed the app and looked up at the night sky, stars scattered carelessly across the darkness. The past was finally quiet, and the future wide open. One chapter remained, not about revenge, but about meaning, because freedom is only powerful when you know what to do with it. The strangest thing about freedom is how quiet it is. No fireworks, no applause, no dramatic soundtrack swelling at just the right moment. Just space, space to think without interruption, space to choose without guilt, space to breathe without asking permission or bracing for consequences. I realized that one morning as I sat on the balcony, coffee cooling beside me, watching the ocean roll in the way it always had, steady, patient, eternal. The water didn't care about my past. It hadn't changed its rhythm for Darren, or betrayal, or the years I spent shrinking myself to keep someone else comfortable. The ocean had been there long before I learned how strong I could be. Freedom didn't feel exciting, it felt right. The publishing house grew slowly, the way meaningful things usually do. No shortcuts, no hype, no desperate chasing of validation. Just careful decisions, long conversations, and work done with intention. Anna brought in new translators, people who had spent years unheard. One of them, a soft-spoken man from Lisbon, sat across from me at a small cafe, hands shaking as he held the acceptance email on his phone. When I told him we wanted to publish his manuscript, his eyes filled with tears. "You don't know what this means," he said, voice breaking. I smiled gently. "I think I do. Every book we released felt like an act of quiet rebellion. Stories that survived, voices that refused to disappear, truths that didn't need permission to exist. I wasn't just building a company, I was building meaning." One evening, after a modest reading event, wine glasses clinking softly, folding chairs stacked near the wall, a woman approached me. Mid-40s, calm eyes, confident posture, someone who knew herself even if she'd taken the long way there. "I was at your anniversary," she said gently. For a brief second, my body reacted before my mind could, old instincts. Then I relaxed. "Yes," I replied. She nodded slowly. "I didn't know you then, but that night changed something for me." "For you?" I asked. She smiled, sadness and gratitude intertwined. "I left my husband 2 months later. Watching you stand there, I realized I wasn't crazy. I was just tired of being erased." My throat tightened. "I hope you're doing well," I said quietly. "I am," she replied. "Because you showed me it was possible." After she walked away, I stood alone for a long moment, letting her words settle. Impact isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a ripple. Sometimes it's one woman finding herself because another refused to disappear quietly. Darren's life continued on a different scale now. Smaller, slower, unforgivingly honest. He learned how to live without applause, without admiration. Without someone else smoothing the consequences of his choices. Some nights he sat alone in his studio apartment, eating takeout from cartons, scrolling through old photos he never deleted, not because he wanted the past back, But because he finally understood it, he didn't hate me anymore, he respected me, and that perhaps was the hardest punishment of all. One afternoon, I received something unexpected, a handwritten letter, not an email. Not a message request, a letter. It came from Germany from a neighbor of my aunt's. She wrote about Josephine, about the dinners she hosted for strangers, about the young women she helped quietly without credit, about the way she lived fiercely, unapologetically, without waiting for approval. At the end, she wrote one sentence that stayed with me. She believed independence was the greatest love story of all. I folded the letter carefully, hands steady. She was right. That night, standing on my balcony again, I raised a glass toward the dark sky. "To you, Aunt Joe," I whispered. The ocean answered in waves. I thought about everything I had lost, a marriage, a future I once imagined, a version of myself that stayed too long out of loyalty to the wrong things, and everything I had gained: clarity, ownership, peace. People ask me if I regret those 25 years. I don't. They taught me the most important lesson of my life: never confuse endurance with love, and never mistake silence for weakness. The past no longer chased me. The future no longer frightened me. I wasn't rebuilding. I wasn't proving anything. I was simply living, exactly where I was meant to be. Final closing line, optional for YouTube. Sometimes the strongest ending isn't revenge. It's becoming so whole that the past no longer has a voice. The first anniversary of my divorce passed quietly. No cake, no speeches, no reminders buzzing on my phone demanding that I feel something specific. Just another morning in Miami. Sunlight spilled across the floor in long, golden lines, warming the marble beneath my feet. Beyond the glass, the ocean breathed in its slow, steady rhythm, unconcerned with dates, anniversaries, or human milestones. I made coffee barefoot, wearing an old linen shirt that smelled faintly of salt and sunlight, and realized something simple but profound. I wasn't marking time anymore. I was living inside it. There was no sense of loss attached to the day. No heaviness, no need to look back and measure what had ended. The past had stopped asking for acknowledgement. The publishing house had just signed its seventh title, a novel from Eastern Europe, raw, uncomfortable, unpolished in the way truth often is. It wasn't designed to soothe. It wasn't meant to flatter the reader. It demanded attention. Exactly the kind of story people once told me wouldn't sell. Exactly the kind that mattered. Anna leaned against the frame of my office door that afternoon, arms crossed, eyes bright. "We're getting attention," she said. I raised an eyebrow. "Good attention or chaos attention?" She laughed. "The kind that lasts, that was always the goal. Not noise, not spectacle, legacy." Some evenings I walked the beach alone, not lonely, just alone. There's a difference no one explains when you're younger. Loneliness is absence, aloneness is choice. And choice feels powerful when it's finally yours. I listened to the waves, watched the sky change colors, let my thoughts come and go without interrogation. I'd earned that quiet. Back in Washington, Darren marked time differently now. His days ran on schedules, pickups, drop-offs, waiting lots, ratings. The rhythm of responsibility had replaced the illusion of importance. Some passengers recognized him, most didn't. That anonymity hurt at first, like being erased. Then slowly it healed. One night, a young man slid into the back seat, restless energy vibrating off him. "You ever feel like you screwed up your whole life?" the kid asked suddenly, staring out the window. Darren considered the question carefully. "Yeah," he said, "but you don't get to undo it. You just get to do better after." The kid nodded slowly, like he'd been handed something real. Maybe he had. That month, I received an invitation. A women's leadership panel. Topic: power, silence, and reinvention. I stared at the email longer than I expected. My instinct was to decline. I'd grown comfortable in my quiet. I didn't crave attention. Then I remembered the woman who told me my story helped her leave. So I said yes. Standing on that stage weeks later, microphone warm in my hand, I scanned the audience. Rows of faces, curious, tired, hopeful. Women who carried their own versions of silence. "I'm not here because I was brave," I said calmly. "I'm here because I was underestimated." A murmur rippled through the room. "Silence doesn't mean consent," I continued. "And starting over isn't failure." I paused. "It's authorship." The applause that followed wasn't loud for drama's sake. It was steady, grateful. That night I returned home and stepped onto the balcony once more. Same ocean, same stars. Different woman. The breeze moved through the palms below and the city lights reflected softly off the water. I thought about Darren, not with anger, not with nostalgia, with neutrality. That's how you know healing is real. Indifference isn't cruelty. It's freedom. I lifted my glass, not toward the past, not toward regret, but toward everything still unfolding. "To the life I chose," I said softly. The ocean answered. One final moment remained, one last reflection. And the story would end not with revenge, but with freedom. The message came on an ordinary Tuesday. No buildup, no warning, no urgency wrapped in regret, just a notification sliding across my screen while I was reviewing a manuscript, the cursor blinking patiently where I'd left off. Unknown number, this is Darren. I heard you're speaking next month. I just wanted to say you deserve it. I stared at the screen for a long moment, not because it shook me, but because it didn't. There was no tightening in my chest. No flicker of anger, no echo of the woman I used to be. That absence was the proof. The final kind. I typed back one sentence, me take care, nothing more, nothing less, no reopening, no rewriting, no invitation. I set my phone down and returned to the manuscript, finishing the paragraph without losing my place. That's when I knew he no longer lived in my head. That evening, the publishing team gathered for a small celebration in the office. No champagne towers, no speeches prepared in advance, no attempts to make the moment bigger than it needed to be, just wine poured into mismatched glasses, laughter spilling naturally. Conversations stretching late into the night because no one felt the need to rush home from a place that finally felt aligned. Anna raised her glass first. To Naomi, she said, smiling. For believing when no one else did. I shook my head gently and lifted my own glass. To all of us, I said, for choosing meaning over fear. We drank, we stayed, stories were told, plans were sketched on napkins. Ideas bounced freely without anyone shrinking themselves to fit the room. Later that night, I walked alone along the shoreline. The tide was low, the moon bright, the sand cool beneath my feet. Footprints appeared behind me, soft and temporary, then vanished as the water rolled in and erased them without ceremony. Nothing lasts, and that's okay. Back across the country, Darren sat in his car that same night, engine off, window cracked, the distant sound of traffic humming around him like a low, steady pulse. He reread our short exchange once, just once, then deleted the thread, not out of bitterness, out of acceptance. Months passed quietly, without announcement. I stopped being introduced as the woman from that viral divorce story. I became the publisher, the founder, the woman who listens. That felt right. On the anniversary of my Aunt Josephine's birthday, I transferred a portion of the company's profits to a women's legal aid foundation. No press release, no announcement. No credit taken, just action, because real power doesn't need witnesses. One night, sitting on my balcony again, the ocean breeze warm against my skin, the city lights flickering softly in the distance, I thought about the question people still ask me, gently, cautiously, like they were afraid of the answer. Do you believe in love again? I smiled. Love had never been the problem. Ownership was, possession, control, the idea that devotion required disappearance. I didn't need applause, I didn't need revenge, I didn't need to be understood by everyone. I needed autonomy, and I had it. Somewhere in the city, music drifted through the night. Laughter followed. Life continued, unconcerned with my past, generous with what came next. I took a final sip of wine and whispered into the dark. Thank you, not to Darren, not to fate, to myself, because in the end she didn't win by destroying him. She won by choosing herself. If this story moved you, let me know where you're listening from. Drop a comment, share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories. I'll see you in the next one.